Hello folks, so today I'm going to share with you a recipe from start to finish on pressure canning barbecued pulled chicken or pork. This is a great meal to have with your family over nachos, over rice, to eat it on buns or in wraps. There's so many different things that you can do with the barbecued pulled chicken or barbecued pulled pork. I am using a tested recipe online that I will also post in the link below there for you. So it is a trusted recipe that I am following along to. And I'm also going to be using chicken instead of pork, okay? So I wanted to show you, starting off, what you want to make sure you're doing is having a clean slate space to have your canning items all laid out, okay? So this is what I'm talking about. Once you have your space all cleared up and kind of organized to how you want it to be, then you can get right into it. But a few things that I just want to go over before we get into it that I feel are really important and some really great tips for you to maybe just consider when you're pressure canning. So some reasons why you may want to pressure can, and I have a few here that I'm going to read over to you. So for me personally, canning is really great for somebody who grows their own crop or may raise their own meat. So I'm not a huge gardener. My plan is to definitely expand my gardening in the coming years for sure. But last summer I had an overabundance of different things that essentially went to waste. So I'm really excited now that I have kind of this familiar relationship, I guess, with pressure canning and such, that I can actually plan out my garden in a way that when I have that overabundance of crop, that I can do things with it in a really productive way. Okay. So that's one reason. Maybe you raise your own beef or chicken, and instead of filling your freezer with the beef and the chicken, it's really great to can it, right? To pressure can those items, because first off, you're taking up less freezer space. A lot of people will go and spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on extra freezers in their home just to fill them up with the meat, right? And that's just not realistic for a lot of people, especially, in times right now. It's just not realistic to go throw that money down on those items, those big ticket items. So by pressure canning your meat that you've grown yourself, you're able to have it on your shelves. It takes up your shelving pantry space, yes, but it's not in your freezer taking up all that space. You're not having to buy those big ticket items. And it lasts longer. So when you pressure can and when you follow a tested recipe, you can have these cans last 2+ years on your shelf, which is pretty phenomenal, right? That's pretty awesome. You can can with bone in. There's so many different recipes. Definitely look at trusted sites. So one of them would be the Ball website. Also, healthycanning.com has a lot of trusted, tested recipes out there with various meats using various cuts, bone in, bone out, tips, and all that kind of stuff. So, you're taking up less freezer space, which is fantastic. You know what you're making and what you're putting into these jars as well, which I really appreciate and really like. So maybe you're somebody who has a sodium sensitivity, or you want to watch the sodium that you're using. Well, you can make some really great soups and have them on your shelf, right? And you can control the sodium and the different spices and herbs and all that kind of stuff that's going into those. Maybe you're the person who wants to watch their spending, how much money you're spending, and you're on a really tight budget. So say, for example, chicken goes on sale for $2.99 a pound or $1.99 a pound. It's not likely that it goes on for that cheap, but maybe someday it does. And you want to stock up on that chicken because that's a really friggin' great price. So you stock up on the chicken, you bring it home, you throw it in your freezer until you're ready to pressure can it. If I know that I want to pressure can chicken or any different meats in a certain way, I'll cut it up before I put it in the freezer, right? And then just take it out 24 hours before you go ahead and pressure can it, and it's ready to process. And you can take an afternoon and process all the meats or all the vegetables or whatever it is, and it saves you time and money, right? So for one example, I had purchased a 15-pound bag of potatoes for less than $3. They were on super cheap. They might have been $3.97 actually, but anyways, that's still significantly cheap. So I was able to cut and peel and wash those potatoes in about an hour. I think it took me, and then I pressure canned those, so now they're able to go on shelf storage. So as example, these were the potatoes that I had done last night. I got 10 jars. I actually had peeled 20 pounds altogether, and so I've gotten 10 jars, and I have about 10 more jars of produce left in my fridge soaking in water right now. So I'm going to do those as well today, not just the barbecued pulled chicken. So this is the potatoes, and now they can go sit on my shelf and sit there for easy meals, like in soups and stews and mashed potatoes. And if I want to do like potato salad in the summertime, I can empty this can and mix up some egg or whatever, right? There's so many different options with these. Maybe you're somebody who wants easy and time efficient meals during your week. So if I take, say, 3 hours to process 12 jars of barbecue chicken, that's 12 meals that I can easily pull out during the week and have ready to go for my family. If I'm working like a 9 to 5 job, and I get off of work at 5 and pick my kids up from school or daycare, and it's like, oh, what the heck am I going to make for supper because I didn't prep anything or pull anything out. Typically, you go and you grab fast food or something that's not really the healthiest maybe. So by having this stock in your pantry, you can just say, okay, great, we can have tacos tonight because I have the meat already and it just needs to be heated up, right? Or we can have a really healthy soup, or we can have barbecued pulled chicken tonight on tacos or whatever, right? So on wraps or whatever. So there's so many different possibilities there, and it can make things a lot easier when you are especially like working and you just don't really want to be out you just don't have the time to cook a meal during the week, right? Maybe you're just not feeling good and it's just easier, right? It's definitely easier. So those are some of the reasons why I personally love the whole canning and jarring stuff. I think it's really great. A couple things I want to just go over as well. Some things that you want to have on hand. Make sure that you have one of these funnels. This is really important. So when you're filling your jars, you would have this on, and we'll show you when we're filling the jars. This tool here is like the measuring tool, so it shows you the depth that you have. A lot of the recipes ask for a 1-inch headspace there, and so that's when you put this part on the top of your jar, the rim, and you want all your items to be just below the base here, okay? And then the other side of it is where you would debubble your jars, and we'll show you that when we go ahead and fill them up. This here is to pick up your jars, so you use that to pick up your hot jars. And one other thing I just want to show you, you guys want to make sure that you inspect your jars to make sure there's no cracks or chips in any parts of them. So this is, for example, a jar, and you can see here there is like a sliver of glass missing from the rim. Okay, so this sliver is missing there, and it would be just enough that it compromises this jar, okay? Because when we go to pressure can this, essentially your seal's not gonna work well. The jar may end up cracking more under the pressure. So you definitely want to inspect all your jars before you go ahead and use them. Another thing I want to make notice of is your jars. So they want to be sitting in either like your hot water in the sink until you're ready to process, or in your dishwasher on like if you run the sanitize, or if you just run your dishwasher in general and have them on the top rack there, they can sit there until you're ready in the heat to process. Just because if you take them from cold and then you're putting hot items in them, it could compromise the glass, and then you go and put them in your canner, it can compromise the glass as well and create cracks or anything like that. So I just like to have them sitting in hot water until I'm ready to process them, just like this. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've added all of my ingredients in here, minus my chicken because I want to get this heated up before I put my chicken in. But all my ingredients are in here. The link is below to find that recipe. Like I said, it is a trusted recipe and tested recipe. So you can find that link below to get that recipe. But all my ingredients are here, so I'm going to go ahead and put it on the stovetop. Okay, so I have my chicken, all my sauces in the pan heating up right now. So it's really important to kind of incorporate everything together really nicely. So once you get everything incorporated, just mix it together and heat it on your stovetop for about 5 minutes. That's as per the recipe says. So once it's heated through, then you can go ahead and start canning it. Okay, so the chicken has processed for the 5 to 10 minute time slot there. And so what I'm going to do now is fill up my warm jars here. So they've been sitting in hot water in the sink with my hot chicken. These particular ones are 750 mils. Yeah, 750. I had been doing the 500 ml containers with this, but I've run out of those jars, so I am utilizing my 750 ml. The 500 ml with this particular recipe was a really great amount for 2 good size sandwiches, pulled pork sandwiches or pulled chicken sandwiches. You could also mix rice with it to make it a delicious like stir fry pulled pork or pulled chicken stir fry meal. That would be good for like 4. Like I said, you can put it over nachos. It would be a great nacho recipe. So I'm confident to say that with this 750 ml jar, we'll probably get 3 to 4 sandwiches at least, if not more, with these jars. So great size for sure. And so I'm just filling these up, and again leaving for chicken it's recommended to leave about 1.25 inches of headspace. And the reason for that is because chicken releases more water than like a pork would. And so it's good to give just that little extra bit of headspace there. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've packed my chicken, my barbecue chicken in here. I've added just a little bit, I've had to add just a little bit of hot water to bring everything up to the right headspace. So I've gone ahead and measured. My headspace looks beautiful, 1.25 inch there of all of that. So that's fantastic. I've gone ahead and debubbled. So just sticking this down in here like this, and that allows there to be no air pockets. If you don't have one of these, first off, I highly recommend one of these, but if you don't have one of these, a wooden dowel works good as well. So then I'm going to take my paper towel and I'm going to go around my edges just like I had done with my potatoes, making sure that there's no food or grease or anything like that along the edges before I go ahead and put on my lids. So again, you're not reusing lids here. You're using brand new lids with rings. If the rings are new, fantastic. If you have used lids, great as well. So then I'm going to hand tighten these. While I prepared these in here, I started, you hear those popping with just the heat in there already. I started heating up my stovetop pressure canner. Just because I want the water hot before, again, I put these in because I don't want them to go into cold water. I want them to go in hot water where they're already hot. So inside your canner, you're going to want to put the tray that your canner would have come with in the bottom, and you're going to fill it to what your canner asks to be, its fill line to be. So we're going to go ahead and load our canner. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've put the items into the canner. With this one, this is one that I received from Amazon. There's lots of brand canners out there, so do your research. This was my first investment with a canner, so I didn't want to spend a ton of money on it personally, just because I didn't know if it was something that I would enjoy doing or actually do much of. But I've come to find that I actually do love it, and next time I may invest in something different. But make sure when you get your canner that it's suitable for your oven stovetop here. There's some canners that you can't use on glass stovetop because it can actually crack the glass. So make sure that it's suitable with your stovetop there. You're going to lock your canner into place. There's different brands that actually have like the turning lock mechanism onto them. This one here, what's going to happen is once it gets to a temperature, once the water starts boiling inside and creating the pressure, we're going to see that there's a lot of steam coming out of the portals here, okay? And so when the steam spurts out of here, when it hits a certain temperature, it's going to lock this into place. And this is kind of like a safety mechanism that it has. So it locks into place, and you want to let that vent for about 10 minutes once that locks into place. So you want to let that do its thing for 10 minutes after you have that locked before you actually go ahead and put your weight onto this. So once that locks, you hit your timer for 10 minutes, and then you're going to go ahead, after you do your 10 minutes, you're going to go ahead and place your weight over top of here. Okay, so you're going to put your weight here, and then your pressure, you're going to notice that your pressure builds up. So depending on where you are altitude wise, we're in Nova Scotia, we need the 10-pound weight here, and we want to be sitting around 68, 69 kPa there, okay? So you're going to put your weight on, the pressure is going to build up, and once it hits that 68, 69 there, you're going to notice that your weight starts to jiggle and wiggle around, and that's really the sweet spot you want it to hit at and stay at. So then you're going to reduce your heat down just enough so that it stays at that constant sweet spot for you, okay? And then you're going to pressure can your items for the amount of time that they need to be in there. So here I'm doing chicken. If I was to do them in a 500 ml, which I typically do, it's suggested to do an hour and 15 minutes, but because I'm doing the bigger size jar, I'm going to go up in my time because it is the bigger size jar with that. So it's an hour and 30 minutes in the pressure canner. One thing to take note is when you're storing your cans or your jars is that you do them on a single layer. If you need to do 2 layers, just put something like cardboard or wood between them just to keep everything nice and even. But it is really important to keep them stored at a single layer. And again, taking your rings off, removing the rings so it doesn't create rust, and so that you're not experiencing difficulty taking those rings off down the road. These jars should be food stable for 2+ last years as long as you're following a safe, tested recipe. I have things like soup, taco meat, carrots, potatoes, and make sure again you're also labeling your items with the month and the year and what exactly it is. So right now we have steam coming out this area as well as this area. This is where the locking mechanism happens, and it's a safety valve is what it is essentially there for. So that if for some reason your pressure went way into the caution zone, this could then release so that you're not blowing the top off, right? So once this steams for an X amount of time until it gets to a certain temperature and pressure in there, it's going to lock, and that's going to stop. It's going to cut off that steam coming out. It's also really important every time that you go to do canning to make sure that the cover is clean. Make sure there's no debris in these airways here. So hopefully we can catch it here when it cuts out so you can exactly see what I mean by cutting out, locking, and then there we go. So there we go. It's locked. There's no steam coming out of that now. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and set my kitchen timer for 10 minutes and allow that to do its thing for 10 minutes before I go ahead and put my weight on this area here. Okay, so my 10 minutes is up. I'm going to turn this off. And what we're going to do is we're going to take an oven mitt. Make sure, because steam can burn really badly, you guys. So make sure that you're protecting yourself. And so we're going to take an oven mitt and we're going to put the weight onto here. Okay, and so what's going to happen with the weight in place is you're going to see the pressure start to build. So we're going to see the pressure start to build up onto this gauge here. And what we're looking for is like 68, 69 kPa. So around this area here. And once that builds to where it needs to be, your weight here is going to start to jiggle back and forth. Okay, so now we're coming up to temp and pressure, sorry. The pressure's coming up and you can hear the wiggle of the weight here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to back my my stovetop temperature down. That way it can stay at this constant. So I'm going to back it down to like medium heat. And that way we can have this constant wiggle here, and this is where we want to keep our pressure for an hour and a half. So I'm going to go ahead and add my kitchen timer. So I've started my kitchen timer. Make sure you're not walking away from this. You're not wanting to leave, go out of the house, go out gardening. You know, you want to make sure that you're in the vicinity. So if there's any changes in this wiggle, you can hear it. And you can kind of keep checking back on your pressure every little while. It is very important to stay at that constant there. Okay, so my time is up. I've turned the stove off, and you can see here that the pressure is coming down on and in my tank here. A couple things I want to go over. When you turn this off, you're not going to be taking your weight off right away. You want this to just reduce the pressure on its own naturally. You're not wanting to remove that and let it disperse super quick. There's a couple safety concerns with that. Okay, if I was to remove this weight right now, tons of steam would, at very high pressure, right, because that pressure is quite high right now, would be shooting out of there, and that can just be dangerous. You also risk breaking the glass jars inside. Once all the pressure is out, this will unlock here, so that will pop back down and unlock. And once all of the pressure's out and it's safe for me to go ahead and take the cans out or the jars out, I'll show you how to safely do that. You want to make sure that you're putting it onto a towel because you don't want the shift of the cold countertop on the hot glass jars. So having them on a towel is important. These ones were done yesterday, so I can go ahead and put them in my pantry now. But anyways, so that's a little bit about what happens when it's done, and I'll show you how to safely take the jars out here in a few minutes. Okay, so our pressure has gone down. This has opened right here, so we know that it's not locked. We're at 0 for the gauge. Okay. Make sure that you are wearing your oven mitts when you're doing this, so you're not burning your hand, because there's still going to be steam and this is still hot. So you might just get a little bit of kickback steam when you take that off. And so I can turn this and open that up. Take the cover off. And you want to take those out as soon as your pressure's down. You want to take those out. So by taking them out, you're taking your tool here. You're clamping around the lid. You're pulling straight up and setting them down onto your counter that has a towel. So straight up, over, and down. There's a lot of pressure in these, so you don't want to be shaking them around, tipping them over. You want to make sure you pull up, straight up, over, and down. And I'm going to show you the pressure and how these look. So here you can see how hot these are. They're boiling. They have a ton of pressure in there. I had potatoes in there as well, but you can see the bubbles. These are extremely hot. You do not want to touch these with your hands. You want to let them set for 12 to 24 hours for them to finish their process before you move them. Once they have fully rested, you'll hear a lot of popping happen. We might hear one or two while I'm on video with you. But once they've set, your covers will have a good seal, and you test that by pushing on it. And if it pops when you do that, then you know that your seal isn't good. So when it has a good tight seal, you can't push down with having it pop. You also want to do a test by picking it up. And again, that's one of the tests that you want to do to make sure you have a good seal and not a failed seal there. So like I said, these are potatoes that I had done yesterday. But you can see all that lovely pressure in there, bubbling.